Okay, let's bring in Scott Panchik. Scott, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
We're doing very well.
Yeah.
Wanted to take a look back at, not only your career, but also the season that just was. But first off, why was this the time for you to step away?
Yeah, so that's the million dollar question, right? I feel like this year I was fitter than I've ever been. And I think for me, it was a lot about pursuing this, like you hear it all the time, the best version of yourself and getting to that point. And then also being happy and fulfilled with the things that you've accomplished. And I think that was like the point that I recognized that was different about this year. Was I felt like this year I was more fulfilled than I've ever been. I felt like I had hit, some points in my career, even 2 event wins. Like those are things that I've never done in the past. And I just felt like I had accomplished a lot in the open and all the stages leading up to it. And I felt like it was a really, really great year. And then going into the event, I was a little banged up. I knew it was going to be a hard weekend. I had no idea what each event was going to be like, let alone what the end of the weekend would bring and what that story would be. I knew it was about to be a wild ride and a wild last ride. So announcing it, I think, was important to me because a lot of athletes don't want to talk about that. They don't want to, especially prior to a big event like that. And I think for me, it was this, like, lifting this weight off my shoulders. It allowed me to go into the weekend. I'm really enjoying every moment, from the athletes' dinner on the first night to the award ceremony on the last day and everything in between, because I knew it was my last go at it. And when I announced it, I was like, okay, I want the community, I want everyone to be part of this. I want them to be excited. I want them to share this joy that is going to happen this weekend. And I got everything that I could have possibly wanted out of the weekend. So it was a good feeling.
For sure. When was the moment that, like, you knew, like, as far as like coming to terms with it and finally having that, like, yeah, it's time. And I'm curious, what sort of working out process did you have to go to? Was there any sort of like denial or pushback internally for you to be able to come to that point and finally announce it?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you in these last 2 weeks that I didn't, wake up occasionally, or, it crossed my mind. I'm like, one more? And I even told my family, I was like, I think if the crowd would have started chanting one more, I would have chucked it up and been like, all right, let's do this.
Damn, should have done that.
I was like, but it's something you wrestle with as an athlete, and I don't think we're ever ready to be done. I really don't. And I don't think that we'll ever, like, truly have like that total peace of mind that, like, oh, that was the right time. Mm-hmm. But what I do know, that this past year was the most fulfilled that I've ever been training, the most joy that I've ever had in my heart, the most exciting season of my career, from the open all the way through the games. Every part of it was amazing. And I felt like the CrossFit community finally got to see who Scott Panchik was. Like, I felt like that, like, I was the truest version of myself, which, like, I think is sometimes really challenging for us as athletes to really have that opportunity to show people who we are and what we do every day, because we're so ingrained in training and having this hard, tough persona. And, I was extremely vulnerable. I probably cried more this year than I have my entire life. And, I see that as a strength now. And I never used to. I always saw that as a weakness. And I just feel like I've grown up and I've experienced so much. The CrossFit community has taught me so much. And I just felt like that, like, this year was just like the mark that I wanted to leave the community with, so that when they think of Scott Panchik, it wasn't Scott Panchik standing at the top of the podium. And that's what I set out to do at the very beginning. And it's challenging to walk out and know that I didn't stand on top of that podium. But I also know that more people are going to be able to relate to me and the adversity that I had to fight through this weekend or that weekend, sharing my story and who I am as a person, not just as an athlete. And I think that that's most important to me. Someday, whenever my little girl gets older, I want her to see her dad as someone who never quit, never gave up. And she'll be able to relate more to that than me being at the top of a podium. The top of the podium is a lonely place. There's not a lot of people. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love to stand. I don't want to say it's a lonely place, but like what I mean by that is there's not a lot of people that get to do that. So being able to relate to someone that does that is a little different than the people that have fallen short of some of the things that they've accomplished. And I think sometimes for us as athletes, especially, we measure up our success on the year. At least I have for a long time on my placement, and the test is different every year. And that's not fair for us as athletes to do that. And that's just who I am. It's probably what has propelled me forward to have 10 years in the sport, evolving as it's evolved. But, for a long time, I'd say like, okay, I took fourth, 3 guys were better than me. What do I got to do to be better? And I wasn't happy with that. I was like, never satisfied. And I think enjoying the moments of accomplishing new things. And, one of the things that in years past that I wouldn't have been happy with is the first event I took, I think 24th in mid 20s, but I got out of the water and I was 7th out of the water on the swim. And I was so proud of that. I was just like, man, my swimming's gotten so much better. And in, me in 2012 or 13, I've been like, I took 24. I wouldn't even thought of like, oh, my swimming got better. But like knowing that like I got better, and it's new athletes that show up every year. It's new tests, and it can eat you up and spit you out. CrossFit will do it. I watch it happen to people in the gym, and we need to be a little more, we need to give ourselves a little more grace. We need to enjoy our victories along the way. And I think that this year I was able to see that more than ever. And that just left me feeling very fulfilled.
Do you think, and this is maybe kind of jumping ahead a little bit, do you think that last year's team competition and the fact that it got canceled and there wasn't any sort of final resolution to a season where, let's be honest, you were guaranteed to be on the podium, do you feel like that added some element of fate, or like, hey, maybe there's a bigger purpose here?
Yeah, absolutely. I learned a lot being on the Mayhem team, being around Rich and the rest of those guys out there, Tasia and China. They're great people. And the people that work out at that barn are hard workers. And those were 2 things that I learned, is how to be loyal, how to treat people like family, how to work hard, regardless of whether there was games or not. We trained all year long. And it was like this we were like pursuing the best version of ourselves with nothing at the end. Like there was no test for ourselves, and we kept training. And someone asked me in my gym, they're like, what are you training so hard for? I was like, I don't know, but when it comes up, I'll be ready. And that was just something that I was just like, I just learned from being out there. And I really, really enjoyed, I felt like mentally, I really enjoyed getting a break from writing my own program, and I got better. And I think that was a big change in my mentality. Was okay. Like I was exhausted mentally at a certain point when I decided to go team. That was like kind of a big part of it. I was I think I'm at the top of my, like what I'm, capable and of doing. And I don't know what else I can do on my own. Mm-hmm. And there was only a handful of guys that I felt had beat me on a regular basis that I was like, these are guys that I would want to team up with. And Rich was one of those guys where I was like, you know what? You got to be humble enough as an athlete to reach out and talk to people. And that's how you get better. And you surround yourself with people that are great, and you'll be great. Like if you want it, you surround yourself with people that are great, you can be great too. You hang out with a bunch of losers, that is not going to happen.
Yep.
So that was what Mayhem was. They were great. They're exceptional at what they do. And having the opportunity to go and train with them, I got better. I got better as an athlete. I felt like I got better as a friend, a dad, a husband. they just made me a better person. And those are the type of people that I surround myself with. I see it every day in our community at CrossFit Mentality. My friends, my family, like I pursue greatness through the people that I surround myself with. And that's contagious. You're the sum of the 4 people you spend the most time with. I truly, truly believe that. And it just so happened I was hanging out with some pretty fit people. So, that was good. When they announced that, hey, you can't be on that team anymore because of the affiliate cup and the way that the season was structured. Part of me was excited, to be honest. I was a little like, oh man, I really wanted to go and, win on this team. But I think more so, I wasn't as upset because I knew I got better. And that was why I went in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people were like, oh, he wants to go win and stay on the podium. Yeah, absolutely. Who doesn't want to go and do that? But like, I think a big part of it was like, I wanted to see if I could get better. And I knew that was a group of people that would help me do that. And I felt I could do the same as well. So when I came out of the team side of things, I was very excited. And then the open happens. I take my best placing in the open, have a great quarterfinals, semifinals went really well. And it was a really healthy year. And it just so happened, I had one flare up right around quarterfinals with my knee, and it wasn't terrible. And then about probably 3 or 4 weeks out before the games, my knee flared up, and I've had 3 knee reconstructive surgeries from playing college football. I don't know if a lot of people know that. And I've been very, very healthy. And I get that a lot in the gym where people, they say, I can't do CrossFit. I had knee surgery. I'm like, you're preaching to the wrong choir.
Yeah.
I said, my knees are held together by my quads and hamstrings.
Yep.
So it's been a wild ride.
How did becoming a father affect your desire to want to compete at a high level?
Yeah, I just wanted to be a great example for my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I still do. And I think there was just moments, even having her there, having her in my arms, I want her to look back on that weekend and be proud of me. And like I said before, that had nothing to do with my placing. And one of the questions I asked a lot of people this past games was like, why do you go to the CrossFit Games? What do you love about it? And it was really, really interesting, the answers I heard, because for a long time, I thought the answer was like, I want to see you stand on the podium. And I think like that's like part of it, but the answers I got were amazing. Like my wife told me, she's like, I love when they announce your name and then there's this like anticipation before you run out onto the floor. And my dad just said like the way your face looks when you like are crossing the finish line. And it was just, there was like so many moments. My buddy Ralph's like, he goes, I'd give up going to the event just so I could hang with you after and hear all the details about what went on behind the scenes and in your mind through each event. He's like, I absolutely love that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just like being able to share all of those things with my daughter those are moments and things that will carry over into every little moment of her life. And I don't know, that I feel like, yes, it's cool to be fit, but like, I feel like that makes me a great dad.
Mm-hmm.
No question.
You just mentioned something that I was curious about. You mentioned like hearing out how things, talking to Ralph about how things went behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about like athletes' experience on the floor, but definitely feel like, you were able to have a little bit better perspective and soak up the holistic experience of the games this year. So how would you say your mindset affected the behind the scenes experience, and what was that like for you?
Yeah. So behind the scenes was a lot different this year for me. I spoke to a lot of athletes, and I typically don't do that. I talked to everyone any chance I got. The one thing I just noticed, and I never saw it before, but there's a little bit of this like emptiness that I see in athletes behind the scenes that is just like, I'm not good enough. And if you're not winning every event, no, like in your mind, that is very much a real thing. And I think the message that I wanted to share with them is to enjoy those victories, like that swimming moment, or enjoying a win, and like knowing you're going to go through hard times. I told Jason Hopper at the dinner on the first night, I said, you're going to go through every emotion that you could possibly think of in 1 week. Everyone, I promise you, every athlete goes through it. And he came up to me, and it was like after day 1, and he looked at me, he goes, I already felt all the emotions. It was like the end of the day. I was like, we're just getting started. So I just think that like when I see that, it like made me want to speak more life into the younger athletes. And, there was guys like Jason who were there for their first time, guys like Saxon who have been there, 3 or 4 times. And then, athletes that are, have maybe a year or 2 left. And I don't typically talk to people. I'm a football player. I was a football player, and I have the whole mindset that like, I don't want to like you at all. It makes it way easier for me to run by you, to push when I need to push, and to dig in if I feel that way.
Yeah.
But I knew this year was different, and I knew that there was maybe some more meaning to why I was there this year. So, speaking to athletes and talking to them about some of the things that I would have wanted to know, as a rookie coming in, someone who was in the middle of their career, and then, athletes that are coming near the end of their career. And one of them was just enjoying every moment of it, because you don't know, like there's a lot of rookies that you might not ever come back, unfortunately. There's athletes that, you get injured and you don't come back. Yeah, maybe you have the potential to go on for 3 or 4 more years, but it's just not in the cards for you, or life happens. And, I've seen a lot, and to just enjoy it and know that the people that are there with you, they just want to see you happy. And that's why you do it. And I felt like this year, it was like me playing sports again as a kid, where you didn't play for anyone else. You grabbed your water bottle and your bag of oranges and your Capri Sun, and you ran out on the field, and you didn't have a care in the world. You wanted to score some goals and hang with your friends. And I felt that again this year. So, I wanted to just pour that into other athletes behind the scenes.
Did you know your knee was going to be an issue going into the games? And if so, how did that affect the way that you kind of approach things from the start?
Yeah. So I knew my knee was going to play a factor in some shape or form. Prior to each event, I had no idea, aside from the handstand walk. That was the only one I was like, that my knee doesn't matter. Like, you're going to be on your hands the whole time. I had full confidence in that. Every other event, I was like, well, let's go see how let's see what happens here. And I really didn't know. If you watch the sprint event, I come out as fast as I could. My body and my knee was just like, nope, sorry, that's not going to happen. So I just didn't know what kind of hurt I was going to be in. And there were a lot of events that went well, obviously. But there were still moments in some of those events where I wasn't able to, fully perform, but I just knew that it was one event at a time. You look at the things that you can do and not focus on the things that you can't do. And there was no way I was going to stop that weekend unless they dragged me off the floor. And I just know that there's so many athletes out there that would love to have an opportunity to get on that field and showcase it. And, there was a moment where Dave came up to me and he said, hey, like, don't put yourself in a position where like, it's going to affect you long-term. And I was like, I won't, I won't do that. Don't worry. And he's like, no, seriously. And he walked me over to medical, and he's like, what's going on with this guy? He's like, and I said, look, it's not swollen. It's hurt. It's not better or worse after any of the events. Like, I don't want to say that, because it was definitely worse after some events, but like, I knew that it was still functioning well. It wasn't by any means like unstable. It was just painful and really uncomfortable. And the biggest thing that was giving me challenges was like the high power output. So like running really fast or turning like around those corners on the clean event was really challenging for me. Any type of jumping could cause, some issues there. But yeah, it was just one event at a time and just keep humming along. And honestly, when you don't have any expectations going into an event, makes you kind of a scary person, because you're going to do like the thruster event. I was like, I'm going to just go for it. Like, what do you got to lose? Like, go for it. Worst thing that happens is you fail. And it was early in the weekend, so I was able to control the bar coming down, and that tempo on the squat was much slower than everyone else's, but it kept my heart rate down, which I think helped me on the wall walk. So yeah, there were a lot of workouts that went well. Some workouts that I would have loved to have seen how my training stacked up on the year. Running was the big one that I really, really wanted to see how I improved in that area. But unfortunately, it was what it was.
Mm-hmm. You kind of touched on what I was going to ask next a little bit about, whether or not having that injury and having that finality of the last year being announced, is that freeing at all? Is that there's like that excitement of like, hey, I guess to like parallel fighting, right? Like when your back's against the wall, it's like, hey, I'm just going to throw haymakers here. And there's something,
for sure.
There's something freeing and exciting about that. And I was curious if you felt that before some of these events, and that's what allowed you to maybe, finally win a few more, after, a break from since your first year.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt very free. That's probably the best word to describe how the weekend played out. It's just every event. Usually I'd go into it with like tons of like strategy in my mind. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Plan A, plan B, plan C, if everything hits the fan. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, hey, how can I possibly get the best? Like, how can I possibly win this workout? What do I need to do? What chance do I need to take to win? And I went and did that all the way through the whole weekend. And sure enough, it, played out in a few, like the handstand walk. I told my wife, I was like, I am going to full send. I'm going to kick down, be fast. I was like, I'm going for it on that one. And it played out well. And I got some redemption on those P bars, which was nice.
Yeah. I was going to say, did you, a lot of people, at least that I've talked to behind the scenes, were like that thruster wall walk event was a lot harder than a lot of people thought.
Yeah.
Was there like a particular moment where you're like, hey, I think I can win this and like go for it?
Yeah. When I crossed over into the second, I think it was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mm-hmm. I smiled, and it wasn't like ha ha ha, I'm going to win. I'm going to get you guys. It was all right, I still got this. Like there's like, because up to that point, it wasn't a great morning. I had, I think a 24th. I did well in the pig event. Most of it was the muscle ups, and I have a pig. So I was able to practice being very technical on there with my knee. I wasn't able to move as quickly as I would have liked, but going into the sprint, I took I think I beat one person in that one. And then going into that event, I was just like, man, I don't know. I don't know if this weekend, like this, I might get cut. I was thinking about getting cut. I was like, this isn't going to play out very well. And I was just like, all right, let's just go for it and see what happens. Whoops, sorry. Hitting, the first 5 sets and then crossing over. I was like, all right, you can still do this. Let's go. Let's bring it for this weekend. And then when it was a first place, I was like, okay, you can throw some haymakers and still hang in there, but this is going to be a different year. It's not going to be, Mr. Consistency across the board, throwing in 5th through 10th place, placing all through the weekend. Like, you're going to need to win some events to stay in the mix. And that was the plan. After that, I was like, okay, haymakers it is.
You are experiencing everything you're experiencing at the games and going through the knee injury and struggling with that. But at the same time, your younger brother is having a heck of a competition. What was it like to be able to experience that with him at the same time that you were going through your final appearance at the game?
Yeah. It was cool to be able to experience that, and just to see him developing over the years, and to be in a position where he was really exciting. And every event I was just, I'd go up, I'd talk to him before or after. And, this was the first time I wasn't in the last heat for a lot of the weekend. So I was actually in the heat before him, and I got to come off, and, I went up and I'd, give him a little hey, something to think about, and, and walk off and talk to him after he came off and had, some victories, and then also come off when, him and I came off the bike snatch workout and, didn't go so hot. So getting to share the ups and downs with him, just made it a really special weekend and something I'll remember forever.
And one thing I have to ask, one of my favorite moments of the weekend is when you crossed the finish line from the handstand walk. You had your back to me because our desk was up, elevated, looking down at the floor. But your celebration, it just felt like so natural and perfect.
That's so funny.
Did you think about that when you crossed?
I didn't, but it's so funny you say that because my brother Spencer, as soon as I come off the floor, he's back in the back. He doesn't say good job. He tells me, he goes, dude, your celebration was awesome.
I kid you not. I was watching, and the way when you put your hands up, like the timing of it from like step platform, double fist pump, and it was like the crowd came up like you were in an orchestra. Whew, man.
It was like I closed my eyes and I kid you not, like I can feel that moment. And that'll be like, there's like points in your CrossFit career of like these like feelings that you have. And that moment was definitely one of them.
I think that's like what they call the flow state, where like everything is going as it should, and you're just firing all cylinders.
There's another cool moment that you got to be part of, and it was during the running toes to bar event where you had members of the crowd running alongside you. What was that like to experience as an athlete?
I've seen that in our gym, but I've never experienced it myself. And it was incredible. Every time I'd come around there, that group was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was another point in the weekend where there were cuts after that event. And I wasn't real sure on how everything was going to play out. I knew I had a good chance of getting through, but to see them rally, it was just like, man, these guys believe in me. They want to see me finish this weekend. And I wanted to finish it, for them as well. And I think that that's the love that I was talking about. That's just something that I've never experienced before. And again, that was one of those moments where, like, if you see me running, I'm like kind of like biting down on my cheeks, and it looks like it's like a pain smile, and I'm like running next to them, and it was just I remember glancing over, they're chanting, and it was incredible. I just, words can't describe the way it made me feel, and it was the perfect representation of what CrossFit is.
Well, and to build off of that, you said earlier that you felt like you were going to have to land some haymakers to kind of perform well. But, and I don't know if you really realize this, your next 5 events were like quintessential Scott Panchik closing the games, by the way. I wrote an article covering your career like that, published on Saturday. And one thing that always stood out to me is, like, generally speaking, the last 5 to 6 events, you just like, you get into this groove where you're like, Mr. Consistency notching. Your last 5 events, average finish of 8.8 across to close the competition after that event. So I'm just saying that to give you some credit, because you were amazingly consistent across the back half of the competition. And I don't know if it was that moment running with those people that fired you up, but it was really cool to see that level of finish, especially with a 5th and a 6th to close the weekend. So
yeah, there were definitely moments that gave me momentum moving forward. You look at, like, I'm a football guy. It's like blocking a punt. You ever see a team block a punt, and then right after that, just big things start to happen?
Take a couple shots. Just felt,
and that's how I felt. Like and there was just, like I said, there was nothing to lose. There was, just send it and enjoy it. And I also know that, like, I'm very fit. Like, I'm fitter than I've ever been. And there were a lot of things that I still could do extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like really focusing on how can I maximize the things that I can do well while getting through the things that are going to be a challenge. And a lot of the times people get so hung up on the things that they can't do, when they should be focusing on the things that they can do. And that should be in training, in the gym, and life. And that was my whole weekend. My whole weekend was focusing on the things that I could do. And that's what propelled me forward in the weekend, as opposed to if I would have just focused on, oh man, this is scary, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. It was just like, hey, just rely on the things that you can control. Know that your training is there, and the rest is going to unfold the way it's going to unfold.
Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, like focusing on the things that you could do outside of the event wins, was there an event or two that in particular that you were just like, hey, this is fun, I'm having a good time, like I'm enjoying myself in competing in this particular event?
Yeah, the free handstanding push-ups was really a fun workout to do, because that was just something that my knee didn't affect, and it was new. So getting the opportunity to like kick upside down and try to tackle something that was brand new to all the athletes, and my knee had no impact on how I could do those. So that was just like a moment where I was like, this is a games experience that I get to have. Like my first year flipping the pig, no one had flipped that, and it crushed me. I bought one. Yeah. So this year I was like ready to flip it. I would have liked to felt a little better flipping it, but still I knew how to. So there was like definitely that moment I really enjoyed. I'm trying to think back to
had you
some of the other
before?
events.
Because I know, you've been around
free
for so
handstands?
long. Yeah.
I we messed around with them a little bit, but the standard was so challenging in a way that the lines were so close together. You had to start in a tripod, kick up, get to the next line, and back down into a tripod. So the rep like counted when you showed control and came down, as opposed to like the way that I had practiced them probably 3 or 4 years ago. I was like, these could come up. We did ab mats down the floor, and you'd go down, hit it on the ab mat, and then got the handstand walk forward to the next one. So it was really the standard of it that I think that threw a lot of people for a loop on that event, particularly. I'm trying to think. I'm running through all the other events in my head. A lot of the other stuff I felt really prepared for, even more so than other years of programming that have shown up at the games. Like this was, out of all the years, this was probably my favorite year of programming.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was really, really well-rounded. There wasn't any like one particular area that I felt got more love than another. And I thought Dave did a great job. I thought it really showcased who we were as athletes. I loved this year how he took giving us flippers to take the skill out of the swimming. For me, like kicking's always been a struggle, and it allowed me to show that I'm actually a very strong swimmer, upper body wise, but lower body wise, that's a challenge. So taking the skill out of that a little bit and letting it be more so about, whether you could, had the conditioning to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that played a big part in me coming out of the swim doing well. But that was a moment I was really, really proud of. And thinking back to how little we swam in 2012 in the Pendleton to, what we swam that day was really cool to look back and just be like, man, 2012, 2021, big difference. And getting to just see that in my career and have that moment, I think was pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's knowing that there's anticipating something is coming, and then there's the reality of it. So you've been anticipating your final event, I'm sure, for a while, and then it gets there, and you're underneath the Align Energy Center, and you're ready to take the floor for the final time in your career. What was going through your head as you're getting ready to do that?
Yeah, I sat down on the rower, and I really had no idea what was going to brew inside of me in that moment. And I knew I was excited. I knew that I wanted to win my heat more than anything. And they put my wife and my daughter on the Jumbotron. And I just remember looking up, and I about lost it. I was like, I'm going to start crying here on this rower right before, they're like 10-second countdown. And I'm like getting ready to start sobbing. I'm like, kind of like pull it together, get it together. And I just remember looking around and just like really taking in that moment and that feeling. One of my favorite parts of the CrossFit Games, aside from just this loving competition, is that feeling right before 3, 2, 1, go. The butterflies. It's like getting to run the first play of a football game over and over, where it's just like, and as soon as that buzzer goes, it's just it disappears, and you just unleash the beast.
Oh, man.
So
I when the linemen get down.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that feeling, and I felt like it was just 100 times that going into that last event and looking up and seeing my wife and my daughter. And I knew in that moment I was going to finish the weekend, which for me was a little bit of a fear that I had. And one of the big things that we talked about going down was like, call out your fears and then call out your truths. And that helped me get through the whole weekend. And seeing them, I knew that I was going to finish what I set out to do. And you know, the Spirit of the Games award was like when they announced it, it was a great feeling. But like in that moment, that spirit of the games, I like felt that inside. And I was actually probably more emotional in that moment, because it was just something so personal between my wife and my daughter and I, that it just felt like the moment. And then when I crossed the finish line and I was there, it just felt like that moment where like I would have her with me on top of the podium, like in my mind, like all year long, you know, I'm gonna stand on the podium. I'm gonna stand on the top of the podium with Kinsley, and like all the hard work's gonna pay off. But like in that moment, I felt like I had done that. I felt like I was a champion, and so many more ways than, you know, that could be displayed over that weekend. And getting to feel that was just like, I can't, words can't describe it. And then it kind of shut off for a moment as I shot through the event. And I knew the lunge was going to be challenging, especially once I went overhead with it, just for taking steps was going to be a little more tough overhead as opposed in the front rack and back rack. And I saw Travis and I was like, oh man, I'm in a good place. I think I can win this thing. And I hadn't raced anyone really across the finish line at that point, because I didn't want to mess something up diving across. But I was like, I don't care. This is it. This is your last time. And to get to like roll across for one more like photo finish with Travis, it didn't matter. I mean, would I've liked to have won? Absolutely. But to get to roll across and then pop up and walk up and down that platform one last time with the crowd roaring, and it was just it was everything that I wanted to experience from winning the CrossFit Games. I got to experience it without winning, and it was 11th. It was my, you know, tied for my worst finish at the games ever. But in that moment, I knew that I won. I experienced something that weekend that I wish I would have been able to tap into for, you know, all 10 of those years.
Yeah.
And but you know, that being said too, like if I would have felt that way all for 5 years, I might not went on to go for another 5 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd argue that it's made me into who I am. And I think that's it. It's like something was different this year. And I felt like it was just time to, you know, venture out of the individual side of things and just see what else is out there for me.
Sure.
I got to be honest with you. When you cross the finish line and they show you with you, now I'm going to get a little emotional, but they showed, you know, your wife. And your
I was starting to as well.
I look over at Chase and he's legit crying. I'm getting choked up, and I didn't we're just going to shut up and we're just going to let this play out. And we took a second to collect ourselves, and you mentioned this a little bit, but I feel if I went back 4 years ago, and I said to you, hey, you're going to finish in 11th, your final time, but you're going to get this great send off, as opposed to being able to finish on the podium. Maybe you wouldn't have thought that would be a good thing, but then when you're in the moment, I think that, like you just described, that finish that you were able to have was probably better than that experience that you were envisioning of, finishing on the podium. I don't know if that makes sense, but I
Yeah.
feel like it wasn't the
No.
ending that you wanted at first, but it's probably the ending that you deserved, and it ended up being better.
It did. I mean, if let's just say I take third or I take second and I'm standing on the podium, nobody knows it was my last year, and and I'm keeping the cards close to me, and I spend a couple months go by and I'm like, hey guys, I'm gonna go be a dad and a business owner now, and it's not the same. And I think as us athletes, we're so afraid to be vulnerable at times that I think that we miss out on feeling. Feeling is good, and I think that it can actually really strengthen us as men and women as soon as we can tap into it, because I think bottling all those things up is not a healthy way to go about life, and people can relate to feeling that way, and I think a lot of people did. And I think that standing on the podium in those moments, and me not telling anyone it was my last year, I don't think it would have, like you said, I don't think it would have been as special.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a send off that I've never felt love. So I've never felt so loved from the CrossFit community, like in all 10 years. Like that was from the moment I stepped on in the first event to the send off there at the end. And it was just, it filled my heart with so much joy, and it gave me the fulfillment that I was looking for all my life.
Yeah.
And all my CrossFit life.
yeah, for sure. And I don't know, and I'm just like spitballing here, but I almost feel like the spirit of the games was a more fulfilling like piece to take home at that point. Like in sports, you very rarely have awards based on character over performance. And to me, like hearing you say like, what I really want out of this is to, for my daughter to look back and see the type of man I was and how I compete and all of those things. To me, that's more appropriately wrapped up in something like the spirit of the games, especially in that year and how you competed, than say necessarily just a podium finish. Do you feel that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, is there any athletes that come to your mind that you remember just like looking at and you're just like, man, they're great athletes, but I just really love who they are as people? And I think that's more important to me than, being a great athlete is great, but someday being an athlete is going to end. And who are you after that? Mm-hmm. And I want people to know that, I'm not running off into the sunset and going dark here. Like I'm going to be very involved with our community, and I have, big plans, and I have some apps that I'm going to be launching here soon to service the community in different ways, from continuing to train and maybe getting out to some events in some different ways. Mm-hmm. And I can't wait to see what that looks like.
When you look back on your career now as a whole, what are the moments that stand out to you the most about your time at the games?
Yeah, I think it was really awesome to get to share the floor with so many great athletes. When I look back over my career, I look at, I felt like I was there for, a lot of different generations of, what I guess are considered the OGs mm-hmm. at this point, and seeing that whole era, come and go. And then I felt like I was there for a middle era as well. So getting to just experience life and evolve with the sport was really special. But specific moments that stick out in my mind, this year, the group running with me was really special. And obviously the final event, 2 years ago, the clean event was epic. Yeah. Just battling it out with, Matt Frazier was just electric. The crowd that night, and I got to be part of the snatch event, and it wasn't the same as the clean event. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's probably because I was in it. I was standing off to the side, watching this time around, but that was pretty epic. I had some great battles with Rich and regionals, and those were obviously memories that'll stick with me, and getting to experience being on a team for a short period of time with those guys. Down at Wadapalooza, we had a crazy finish. It was like a couple, 100th of a second with Tasia burying through the finish line to take the W.
You're the first open announcement athlete ever.
Yeah.
Alongside.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The open announcement with my brothers this year was really special. Being there with both of those guys, I really enjoyed that. And those have been a lot of fun. The one-on-ones for the open, every one of them was just so exciting. And I think there was something special to being like, the two athletes, everybody's watching, and, you're getting like 5 minutes to figure out your game plan, which there's not any other, even at the CrossFit Games, we have a little more time to talk to people and prep for those things. So those were always like really high energy. Snatching 300 pounds this year at 33 and going for that, like having the confidence to go for that. Like I hadn't touched that weight in probably 2 or 3 years. What is there any moments that stick out in your minds?
I mean, I'll never forget your farewell moment. Like just as the emotional impact that had on me. Like I've never had that experience as a broadcaster before, and that to be able to just be part of that. And I think have a perspective that I didn't have 2 years ago, as a dad, because it was very easy for me to put myself in your shoes. And that's what made it a lot more impactful. But I mean, that one, and, I winning Fran back in 2012.
That was cool.
And I think just your consistency overall is what stands out the most to me.
Yeah. You touched on it a little bit, but the 2 event back-to-back of regionals 2014, Nasty Girls version 2, and then the front squat, burpee, strict handstand push-up, that 2 event sequence with Rich was as good a regional competition as we've ever seen. And I wrote about this is people don't realize that had a forever impact on the sport because they rewrote the rule book as a result of the finish on Nasty Girls. So anyone who complains,
so technically that's a no rep, Rich.
Yeah.
So is that a dumb? That's a dumb. That should have been a dummy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, anyone that complains about having to go over the bar and dropping it in front of them,
you can thank Rich running.
I was going to say they can thank you because your hang cleans were faster, and the only reason Rich had to pull that out of his pocket is because you caught him on the last rep. But that, and then coming right back the next day because you guys were already close in the other 2, the 2 events on day 1 prior to that, and then you catching him on the bar facing burpees and jumping from one side of the bar all the way to the finish mat to tie him. Man, I felt like I had enough testosterone to wrestle a gorilla after that one. I mean, we were watching that in the studio and everybody was fired up.
So there was a moment after that event, and it was like pure, like, I don't emotion. I don't know how else to describe it. Where I do something that is like little bit like out of character for me. Like I'm not a big like celebrations guy when it comes to like winning just an event in that way, where I spiked my belt and I ripped my belt off and I spiked it. And I remember just thinking in that moment, I was like, yeah, you can do this. You could do this. This is your job. Let's go do your job. It was just like such a cool moment. Obviously Rich is an incredible athlete that's accomplished so much in the sport, both in the individual and team. And just to have a moment where like you can beat somebody, like to beat somebody that is that good and that dominant in so many things. It just, that was what was big about our regional was like, it was always the one year, I think all 5 of us were inside the top 10. I think it might've been 2013.
Yep.
We were all inside the top 10. And it was like, if you could go to the Central East region and do well, you were going to not just go to the games to go to the games. You were going to go to the games and be maybe a contender, a guy that's, could get on the podium. And they all believed that too. So I think that I missed that regional atmosphere in that way.
It was like
was
a
always
crucible.
really cool.
It was like this crucible, like you said, that like anyone that came out had that like stamp of approval for the games. And those two events I brought up specifically because you chased down Rich in both of those. Like you were behind him coming off the muscle ups. You were behind him coming to the barbell. And like, I think those two events characterized your will as an athlete to like, even if you're a little bit behind or you're a little bit, down, you were going to like find a way to like, dial that up. That to me, that's the football mentality, right? You get pancaked on one play, you reset, you load up and you pancake the guy the next one. And those are probably my two favorite memories of you in that one for sure.
Yeah.
What advice now do you give to athletes who are taking the mantle from you here?
What would that's that was a question that we sat down and talked about at an athlete dinner. I sat with four athletes, Will Morad, Travis Mayer, Saxon, and Jason Hopper. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to share with them is that not to define yourself as just a CrossFitter. For a long time, I've been an athlete, and people ask me, who's Scott Panchik? I said, I'm a football player, all through college. And then I got out of college and I was a teacher for a year, but then I found CrossFit and I'm a CrossFitter. If someone asked me, I'm a CrossFitter, not a teacher, I'm a CrossFitter. And I think for a lot of athletes, they define themselves as one thing. And I think there's so much more to each and every one of them that the world wants to see. And the encouragement that I would give is like, share who you are. You're more than just a CrossFit. And as soon as you realize that, you'll unleash something that you didn't know you had. Being a husband, a father, a friend, a leader in our community for CrossFit mentality, a son, a brother, the list goes on, and those friendships and all of those things, and pouring back into people, and finding out what their CrossFit games are and how you can support them. And as you continue to build up that group of people that you're with, and you pour into them as much as they're pouring into you, you're going to see something change. You're going to start to feel joy. You're going to start to feel this weight that is lifted off your shoulders that you feel like you have to carry on your own. And you don't, and that you're, not to define your success based off of your placement, I think was probably the biggest message, because the test is different year after year. It's not pass fail, and to enjoy your victories. You look at what Rich has done, you look at what Matt has done. Justin just won the CrossFit Games, and I hope he knows that like what he just did was incredible, and that he's proud of that. And he doesn't feel like he has to do it 4 or 5 years in a row for it to be great and valuable to him. And I think, that's that like mentality that we have, especially at that high level, and to keep coming back year after year. It's like, okay, I took third. I want second. I want first. I get second. I want first. And it's like you want, and then like it's not that your placement isn't going to fulfill what you're actually looking for. So what you have to find out is you have to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm actually looking for? What do I want? And that was me, and that was this year. What do I want to get out of competing this year at the CrossFit Games? Yeah. And it's this fulfillment. That's that emptiness that I said I see, because it's this feeling that you get where it's like, just not good enough to get what I want. But as soon as you realize that you're getting better year after year after year, and you start enjoying the victories, and you start showing people who you are, you start showing your heart, you're going to start experiencing joy and fulfillment. And I'm telling you, that is like unleashes something inside of you that is very, very dangerous. I mean, if you don't believe me, go look back on my career. I had 2 event wins this year. That it's been 10 years. I had one event win, 2012. It was my only event win. I was consistent. but like I was rolling the dice. I was like throwing haymakers, like you said, and going for it and enjoying myself. And I think that was probably the biggest thing, was that there was no stress. And the stress that these athletes are feeling isn't from their friends and family. We put it on ourselves. We set these expectations, and that's great. It will propel you forward. It will make you great, but it will also destroy a little piece of you too, if you let it. So, keep surrounding yourself with great people. Keep working hard. Know that you're more than a CrossFitter, and love what you do.
That's great stuff, man. I know you mentioned a little bit about what you're going to be doing here in the future, but where can we find Scott Panchik here in the coming months and years?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Scott Panchik. I'm releasing an app called Unlocked. So that'll happen at the beginning of next month. So be on the lookout for that. And I'll be coaching some classes through Stream Fitness here soon as well. So excited to get more in depth with the community, and can't wait to see what this next chapter of my life brings.
Nice. Epic. Yeah. Well, listen, man, we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It has been an absolute just pleasure to be able to cover you these past 10 years and watch what you've accomplished, not only as a person, but as a competitor. And thank you for all the great memories, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it was always a joy to watch you compete.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.